The attic ladder was down. Not all the way. Just enough for me to notice. Maybe 6 inches. Maybe 8. At first I thought I'd forgotten to push it back up. That would have been a perfectly reasonable explanation. The problem was, I hadn't been in the attic for nearly 2 months. I noticed it on Tuesday morning. I was heading to work when something caught my eye in the hallway ceiling. The pull-down attic ladder wasn't fully closed. One corner hung slightly lower than normal. I stared at it for a few seconds, then shrugged and pushed it back into place. I lived alone. Nobody else had access to the house. Nobody else should have been able to open it. So I assumed there had to be some simple explanation. Maybe the latch wasn't catching properly. Maybe humidity caused it to shift. Something like that. I didn't think about it again until 3 days later. Friday morning. The ladder was down again. The exact same amount. This time I stood there longer, trying to remember if somehow I bumped it. Maybe I never fully closed it when I pushed it up. Maybe I imagined it. Still, something felt wrong. That evening I climbed up to inspect it. The attic stretched above the house from one end to the other. Nothing unusual, just insulation, wooden beams, and old storage boxes. I checked the ladder. Everything appeared normal. The latch worked. The hinges worked. Nothing seemed broken. I climbed back down and forgot about it. Until the following week, Monday morning, the ladder was down again. Exact same amount. I remember standing beneath it with my coffee in hand, staring, trying to make sense of it. Eventually I grabbed a marker. I made a tiny dot near the edge of the hatch. Something only I would notice. That night I pushed the ladder completely shut, made sure the latch clicked. Then I went to bed. The next morning, the ladder was hanging open, and the mark was gone. Not scratched, not worn away. It was gone, like someone had painted over it. I climbed up immediately. The attic looked unchanged. Same boxes, same insulation, the same dust. But something caught my attention near the far end. A footprint. Just one, pressed into the insulation. I froze. At first I convinced myself it was old. Maybe left by a contractor years ago. Maybe left by the previous homeowner. Then I noticed something. The insulation around it looked undisturbed. The footprint itself looked fresh. I didn't like that. Not at all. I took a picture and climbed back down. That night I barely slept. Every little noise seemed louder than usual. Every creak made me sit up. Every sound made me listen. Around 2 a.m, I heard something. A soft thump, directly above me, from the attic. I sat upright, listening. Silence. Then another thump. Slow, heavy, like somebody shifting their weight. I grabbed my phone and listened for nearly 20 minutes. Nothing happened. Eventually exhaustion won. I fell asleep. The next evening, I bought a motion-activated camera. Nothing fancy, just something that would record if movement occurred. I placed it in the attic facing the center walkway, then went downstairs. The next morning I checked the footage. Nothing. Hours of nothing. Until 2:13 a.m. The camera activated. I watched the video 3 times. The attic remained completely empty. No people, no animals, nothing. Yet something had triggered the camera. Then I noticed movement. Not in front of the camera, behind it. A shadow moved across the insulation. A shadow appeared for less than a second. Then it disappeared. The footage ended. I immediately climbed into the attic. Nothing. No shadow, no animal, no explanation. Just silence. That's when I found the second footprint. Then the third. Then dozens more. Each one leading toward the far end of the attic, towards a section hidden behind old insulation panels. I had lived there for nearly 3 years. I had never noticed it before. Carefully, I pulled the insulation aside. Behind it was a small opening, a space between the attic and the exterior wall, large enough for someone to crawl inside. My stomach dropped, because there was stuff in there. A blanket, empty water bottles, food wrappers, a flashlight. Someone had been living inside my attic. Recently, very recently. I called the police immediately. Officers searched the house, the attic, the hidden space, everything. Nobody was found. Whoever had been there was gone. But while searching the crawl space, one of the officers discovered something else. A notebook. Most of the pages were blank, except for the last one. The final page contained a list. Dates. Dozens of dates. Each one matched a day I'd been away from home. Business trips, family trips, weekend vacations. Someone had been tracking me, watching me, learning my schedule. The final entry was written only 2 days earlier, and beside it were 3 words. He finally noticed. I sold the house 6 months later. I never learned who had been living up there, and honestly I don't want to know, because sometimes late at night I still think about the notebook, and the fact that whoever wrote it knew exactly when I was home, and exactly when I wasn't. The first time I heard the footsteps, I blamed the house. Old houses make noise. They settle, they creak, they shift when temperatures change. That's what I told myself. What I didn't know was the sound would continue every single night for nearly 3 weeks. And by the time it stopped, I wish I'd never investigated it. I bought the house when I was 34. It wasn't huge, just a 2-story home built sometime in the 1940s. The attic sat directly above the second floor. Most of it was unfinished storage space. I rarely went up there. There was no reason to. The noises started in November, around midnight. It was always around midnight. At first it sounded like a single step. Thunk, then silence, nothing else. The second night I heard 2 steps. Thunk, thunk, slow, heavy, as if someone was walking carefully across the attic floor. I remember sitting up in bed, listening, waiting. Nothing followed. The house became quiet again. Eventually I fell asleep. By the 4th night, the footsteps had become impossible to ignore. Every evening around the same time, I heard movement overhead. Always walking, never running, never pacing, just walking. Slowly, one side of the attic to the other, then stopping. I checked for animals, nothing. I checked for loose boards, nothing. I checked for branches touching the roof, nothing. Everything seemed normal. The footsteps continued. One night my brother stayed over. I didn't mention the noises beforehand. I wanted to see if someone else would notice them. Around 12:30 a.m., the footsteps began. Thunk, thunk, thunk. My brother immediately looked up. What the hell's that? Hearing him say that made my stomach drop, because it confirmed I wasn't imagining it. The next morning we climbed into the attic together. We searched every corner. Boxes, insulation, old furniture, dust. Nothing else. No signs of animals. No nests. No droppings. Nothing. Just an empty attic. For a few days the noises stopped. Then they returned, louder. Now it sounded as if whoever was walking had moved closer, closer to my bedroom, closer to where I slept. One night I woke up to the sound of footsteps directly overhead. Not across the attic, not somewhere distant. They were right above me. I laid there frozen, listening. The footsteps stopped. Then something scraped across the floor, a long dragging sound, like furniture being moved, or something heavy being pulled. I grabbed a flashlight and headed upstairs. Part of me hoped I'd find an animal. At least that would make sense. I climbed the pull-down ladder. The attic was dark, silent, still. Nothing moved. Then my flashlight landed on something strange. A folding chair, sitting in the center of the attic, facing downward, toward my bedroom ceiling. I stared at it. I had never seen that chair before, ever. The attic had been empty during every previous inspection, yet now a chair sat directly above where I slept. I immediately carried it downstairs. The next morning I asked the previous owner about it. His response bothered me, because he didn't seem surprised. He simply asked, "Was it above the bedroom?" I told him yes. The man became quiet. Then he said, "I would have left it alone." Before I could ask what he meant, he changed the subject. I never got an explanation. That night I installed 2 cameras, one facing each end of the attic. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Then the 4th night, one of the cameras activated. I opened the footage expecting to see an animal. Instead, I saw darkness. The attic appeared completely empty. Then something happened. The chair moved. Not much, just a few inches. Enough that I knew it wasn't my imagination. The chair shifted, by itself. No person appeared, no animal appeared, nothing touched it. It simply moved. The following morning I returned to the attic. The chair sat directly above my bedroom again, facing downward, exactly where I first found it. I carried it outside, loaded it into my truck, and drove it to the dump. The footsteps stopped immediately. No more walking, no more dragging sounds, no more noises, for nearly a month. Then one night, I woke up around 1 a.m. Everything felt normal, quiet, peaceful, till I looked toward my bedroom ceiling. Something was written there. 4 words, faint, almost invisible, as though someone had scratched them into the paint years earlier. I had never noticed them before. The words read, "Don't move the chair." I sold the house 8 months later. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe someone had played a prank. Maybe I missed something obvious. But I know 2 things. The footsteps were real, and the attic was a lot quieter after the chair came back. Because when I moved out, I found it exactly where I had thrown it away, sitting in the attic, directly above the bedroom. The room wasn't supposed to exist. That's the simplest way I can explain it. According to the house plans, it shouldn't have been there. According to the inspector, it wasn't there. According to everyone who had ever lived in the house before me, it wasn't there. And yet, I stood inside it. I discovered it by accident. The house was old, almost 100 years old. It sat on the edge of a small town that had belonged to the same family for generations before I bought it. Most of the place had been renovated over the years. The attic hadn't. The attic looked exactly how you'd expect. Exposed beams, old insulation, dust, boxes left behind by previous owners. Nothing unusual. I only went up there because I noticed a water stain on the ceiling of a guest bedroom. I wanted to make sure the roof wasn't leaking. It should have been a quick inspection, 30 minutes at most. Instead, I found something that kept me awake for months. I was near the far end of the attic when my foot slipped. The insulation shifted beneath me. As I caught myself, I noticed something strange. A section of the wall sounded hollow. That wasn't unusual by itself. Old houses have odd spaces, odd construction, odd repairs. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I pressed harder. The insulation moved. Not much, just enough to reveal wood underneath. Then I saw the outline. A door. A small wooden door hidden behind the insulation panels. I stared at it for several seconds. I had inspected this attic before, multiple times. I had never seen it. Carefully, I pulled the insulation aside. The door stood barely 5 feet tall. No handle, no lock. Just rough wood painted the same color as the surrounding structure. My first thought was storage. Maybe an old crawl space. Maybe an unfinished area. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me immediately. Stale air. The smell hit me immediately. Stale air. Dust. Something old. I aimed my flashlight inside. The beam disappeared into darkness. Not a crawl space. A room. An actual room. Small, maybe 8 by 10 feet. But definitely a room. Finished walls, finished floor, finished ceiling. Someone had built it intentionally, and then hidden it. I stepped inside. The room contained almost nothing. Just a wooden chair, a small table, and faded wallpaper peeling from the walls. No windows, no electricity, nothing else. The entire place felt wrong. Not haunted, not supernatural, just wrong. like finding evidence of something you weren't supposed to discover. Then I noticed the scratches, hundreds of them, covering one wall. Tallies, rows and rows of tally marks, thousands. Someone had been counting something. Days maybe? Weeks? Months? I didn't know. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I took several photos before leaving. Then I called the previous owner. An elderly woman answered. When I described the room, the line was silent. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she asked, "Did you go inside?" The question immediately bothered me. Not because of what she said, because of how she said it. Almost like she already knew. I told her yes. Another pause. Then she quietly replied, "My grandfather told us never to open that door." I laughed, not because it was funny, because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. According to her, every generation in the family knew the room existed. Nobody talked about it. Nobody entered it. Nobody removed it. The door remained hidden. That was the rule. When I asked why, she gave the answer I hate most. "I don't know." Then she hung up. That night I couldn't stop thinking about the room, the tallies, the chair, the hidden door. Eventually curiosity won. The next evening I returned, this time with better lighting. I wanted answers. I wanted to know who built it, why it existed, and what it was used for. The moment I entered, something felt different. The chair had moved, only slightly, but enough. The previous day it faced the table. Now it faced the door, facing me. I immediately checked the floor. No footprints. No sign of anyone entering. Nothing. Still, I know what I had seen. The chair had moved. I searched the room for nearly an hour. Eventually I found something hidden beneath loose floorboards. A notebook. The cover had long since rotted away. Most of the pages were unreadable, except for the final section. Those pages were filled with names, hundreds of names, written over decades. Different handwriting, different ink, different dates. And every name had a line drawn through it. Every single one, except the last name. The last name wasn't crossed out. It was blank. Just empty space. Waiting. I left immediately. The next morning, I contacted the county records office. According to official blueprints, the room didn't exist. Not because it had been removed, because it had never been recorded. No permits, no additions, nothing. As far as the county knew, that section of the attic was a solid wall. Several days later, I made a decision. I sealed the door shut. Plywood, screws, new insulation, everything. I wanted it gone, forgotten. And for a while, that seemed to work. Months passed. No strange noises, no problems, no hidden rooms. Then one night, I woke up around 3 a.m. I heard a single sound from the attic. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I never went back up there. Not once. The room still exists. At least I assume it does. Hidden behind insulation, hidden behind plywood, hidden behind a door nobody was supposed to open. And sometimes I wonder about that notebook. The names. The crossed out names. The empty line waiting at the bottom. Because the longer I owned that house, the more I started feeling like the room wasn't forgotten. It was waiting. And it knew someone had finally come inside.